These are just some of the reasons people online have given to explain why Games Workshop keep making these limited release box sets, but today I'm going to reveal the secret behind why they really are in short supply. For some time now, Games Workshop have been creating boxed games that seem to run out of stock and then aren't produced again. There are many examples of this over the years. You can go back to every release of Space Hulk, for example, just to see how they sell out fast. Then of course we had Shadow War Armageddon, and this sold out, right up to the latest Kill Team starter set, which sold out and was never replaced. These boxes sell out fast and leave a lot of people up in arms about how did GW get it so wrong, why don't they just make more, and they're throwing away sales. More recently, this is happening with more regularity. If we start to factor in the box releases for things like Shadow Spear, Loom Curse and Carrion Empire, just to name but a few, we see a pattern emerging of highly publicised box sets just not being able to meet demand, or in the eyes of some, potentially, a hype that is created to ensure demand outstrips supply, which in itself creates a fear of missing out and a stampede to make sure everyone orders theirs early. Now of course there's one thing that we mustn't forget in this. Games Workshop are, after all, a business. Their sole purpose is to make profit by selling miniatures and accessories such as books, rules, paints, etc. So if they keep selling out, why don't they just make more? Or are they doing this on purpose to create a false sense of desirability? It's worth it at this point to take a look at something that's not sold quite so well, which often gets overlooked. For every Space Hulk, there's a Dreadfleet. And Dreadfleet, when it released, was also cited to be a limited release, much like Space Hulk was. And yet there were hundreds, if not thousands, of copies of the game still on store shelves years later. The game may not have been the greatest game ever, but the miniatures and the contents of the box really were fantastic. If that's the case, why didn't it sell out? Well, one reason is because those miniatures can't be used anywhere else. They could only be used for that particular game, certainly from the Games Workshop range. This made their use very limited. It's also probably part of the reason why Games Workshop Specialist Games Division ended for a little while. Now why have I mentioned this when I'm talking about the secret behind why the box games are in short supply? Well, that's because this illustrates that Games Workshop don't always get it right. They design and produce their games approximately 12 months in advance, and they have to take a calculated estimate of how many boxes they'll sell worldwide. Now that in itself is no mean feat. There are costs associated with tooling for new miniatures that must be taken into account, and the payback of these molds relies on selling a certain number of boxes to get a large enough return on that investment. If you expect to sell 50,000 boxes, for example, and all of your profit margin is based upon selling all of those, and then you only go on to sell 10,000, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. One reason these boxes are limited in supply is because Games Workshop have to estimate at least 12 months out how popular they're going to be. And guess what? Well, they're human and they don't always get it right. That said, it's far better to estimate, say, 30,000 sales, make the profits and make the numbers work on selling all of those, and then sell them all, rather than to overestimate and be left with 20,000 units sitting in your warehouse or on retailer shelves, who then may be less than inclined to buy the next set. So that answers part of the question, why they're in short supply. But why then don't they just make more? If something's popular, surely they're throwing away money and throwing away profits by not making more of them. Well, that all comes down to production scheduling. In any manufacturing process, you'll have a production schedule to ensure you make the right number of products to fulfill all of your orders. In a fast-moving consumer goods environment, this tends to be a forecast of what will sell much closer to the point of sale. In Games Workshop's case, this is probably done 12 months or 18 months out. And by the time that product sells to consumers and sells out fast, guess what our production line's doing? They're busy making another amazing box set that you and I won't hear about for another 12 months. In essence, the production schedule is full and there's no space to go back and make more. Some production lines will be making the high-selling Space Marines and keeping stocks topped up, but more likely there'll be maybe 1 or 2 production lines dedicated to making these box sets, and once the run is done, they move on to the next one. There's no time to go back to it. By the time Kill Team had run out in stores around September 2018, then production lines were on to making something like Shadow Spear, which would be on our shelves about 7 or 8 months later. The reality is there's no big conspiracy. It's all down to production capacity versus the forecasted sales. Is it a nice side effect that limited numbers drive a fear of people missing out and keep those people ordering stock on the pre-order window? Absolutely it is. It keeps interest in the product high, and it means people on the fence about whether they should pick it up or not will tend to be swayed to probably pre-order rather than miss out and know they can't get it later. Could Games Workshop buy more production lines? Of course they could, but that would be a huge amount of money to invest to maybe only sell a few thousand more boxes. The way things are at the moment, this keeps stock levels down in Games Workshop's warehouses as product sells out really fast. It keeps stock levels down on retailers' shelves, so they have space for the next big Games Workshop release, and it removes risk for Games Workshop of being left with thousands of Dreadfleet boxes. In reality, there is no big secret, but the truth, sadly, is less exciting than we'd like it to be.